been a while, so I figured I'd give everybody a little update on my life so far. So, in my last video, one of my second to last videos, I did explain that um, my husband is being shipped off to Greece. Well, it has now been a year since I've made that video, a year and some odd months since I've made that video, I should say. He did go to Greece. He is currently in Greece, and I'm currently back home in Iowa. For reasons I'm not really going to go far into detail, but I did choose not to live in my hometown. I'm actually closer to my sister, near Iowa City. I do have family that I do visit in my area that I do see every weekend. So every weekend I will take my son out there to I'll take my son out to see his grandparents and stuff like that, and then I'll come home. Now, on to the next part of the news. We are currently in the process of PCSing to Japan. So we're going to be stationed in Japan for the next 3 years. Charles is on his 1-year tour currently in Greece, which will come to a close in July. It is currently March 2nd. So in about 4 months he will be home, and I've just now, well, I shouldn't say just now, this whole year since 2020 started, I have been in the process of going through medical screenings and getting dental work done and doing everything that I need to do to get approved to go to Japan for myself and my son. And let me tell you, trying to coordinate paperwork and everything while my husband is in Greece has definitely been a challenge, but you work through it. And some days are harder than others. I think the hardest thing for me was trying to find a primary care provider here in my area in January, and I spent a whole day contacting every single doctor's office that I could think of that would take new patients, and they were all saying, oh, sorry, we're not accepting new patients till June. But luckily I had to have surgery, and I ended up calling the family practice there to see if they would allow me to get in, since I'm already an established patient in their system. And thank the Lord I managed to get an appointment. I got my son all his appointments, got his dentist appointment, check. Now what I'm currently doing, I need to get a government no-fee passport, but I'm waiting for my husband to send me his orders, and then have to get a notarized consent for my son to get his no-fee passport, which is different from a travel passport. It's a government issued passport for government employees who are working abroad, which is what my husband will be doing. So it's no fee because it's no cost to us, but to get one you have to have all this particular paperwork, and I'm trying to get a copy of that so that I can go to the passport office, which is basically the post office, and apply for one. That's currently what I've been doing. And then tonight specifically, I have been going around the house. I'm very tired. It's 2 or 3 in the morning. I've been going around the house, writing out all the serial numbers for all of our electronics that are going to be put on a ship, that are going to be shipped out to Japan. In the previous moves that I've done, I've not really worried about it, because we were just basically going from San Diego to Georgia, from Georgia to Iowa. I didn't think about writing down any of the serial numbers. Charles could barely take anything to Greece with him. He literally took a suitcase and his computer, and just a couple of clothes. He was not allowed to take any furniture, because it was unaccompanied. He wasn't going to have a big house, but anyways, it's a long story, not really, but he ended up getting a house with 5 bedrooms, but furniture was provided, and everything that he needs to live there is provided, so it was kind of just whatever. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been going through all my stuff, getting paperwork together, organizing it, making sure everything is in order. I'm going through all our stuff to decide what's going to stay behind and what's going with us. And I was just reading a little bit more into that tonight about what to take and what not to take. And from the sounds of it, a lot of the stuff that we own, we're not going to be able to take. So that means that we're going to have to put them in storage. And the government provides storage for us, for long-term storage for these reasons. For instance, like, we're not going to be able to take our washer and dryer to Japan with us because in Japan their houses are a lot smaller than a standard United States of America house is. Their design and architecture are just completely different. So that's something that is going to have to stay behind. Other things that they don't recommend taking is like huge oversized beds. I would say that our queen size bed is considered oversized to a degree, but I just talked to my friend Katie and she said that she has a king size bed. So I think our bed will be able to be taken. As far as housing situation there, I don't know if we're going to live on base or out of town. It really just depends on when we get there. We will find out. So always going into the unknown. I think taking less will be a lot more helpful when we get there, and then all of a sudden find out that half our stuff isn't going to fit. I think that is kind of my plan. Thank the Lord for my friend Katie because she's currently there. I think she's been there for a year. I'm not really sure. And I'm so glad to have somebody that is currently there to kind of give me advice and ideas and kind of guide me in a direction. Like, I feel bad because I don't know if she had that type of help, but I'm more than thankful to have any type of help prior to moving, because once we get there and something like our bed doesn't fit and we have to throw it out or sell it to somebody who's actually moving back to the States would be horrible, because our whole bed set, we have like 2 matching dressers, a long one, a tall one, and then the desk, it matches, but it's slightly a lighter color. It's obviously not part of the set, but the bed set is something that's pretty sentimental to me, because when my husband and I moved to Georgia, one of the things that we wanted was to build up our household goods. When I moved out to San Diego, I brought all my stuff with me, which honestly wasn't a whole lot. It was a kitchen table. I didn't bring like any dressers or anything. And then my grandmother gave me a wedding present of $500, and we got a futon, and we used that for our couch. And then we also bought a kind of cheapy TV stand, but I provided the TVs, and I brought a bookshelf with me, and everything else that I had from my childhood were in totes, which we just put in the storage shed that we had in San Diego. But pretty much other than that, the house was completely bare. I did bring actually a dresser with me, which we no longer have. My dad has that. And then when we got to Georgia, we had a decent sized apartment, but we didn't have any furniture, I guess you could say. So we ended up splurging, and we bought the bed set, matching dressers and all. And then what else did we get? We got a huge sectional couch, which I don't know if it's going to be able to go to Japan with us. And then yeah, and just like we moved like 3 or 4 different times while we were in Georgia, and we just kind of accumulated more stuff in those 3 years and started to build up our household goods a lot more in Georgia. In San Diego, we were only there for 7 months. Well, I was there for 7 months. From the time I got married to the time we PCS to Georgia, I was only there 7 months. We got married, and Charles lived on base in the barracks. So he had one room with a provided dresser, a bed provided. So we also bought the bed in San Diego. But it was just on like just tiny little bed rails, no headboard, footboard, any of that jazz. And then obviously in Georgia, I had my son Richard, and our household doubled, it seemed like, in the last 2 years, because not only having a son, but you've got to get furniture for him. So we've had, I actually did bring 2 dressers. So I've got, oh, I'm tired. I'm always tired. So, back when I lived with my parents and I was minor, my parents bought my sister and I matching dressers. So I have my dresser, um, which is in Richard's room. That's what he uses for his dresser. And then, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that we have accumulated. We also, my kitchen table that I had from like when I lived in my trailer, I took that with, and it was like an 8-seater kitchen table. Well, that broke while we were in Georgia, probably through the move. One day I just came home from work and the end of the table was just missing, so that's how that goes. And then we bought a new table. We bought washer dryer, which washer dryer isn't going to be able to go with us from the looks of it, because they provide it on base in base housing, and then they would be too big to work in a traditional Japanese house if we lived off base. So I don't think that our washer and dryer are going to go with us. I really just need to sit down and talk with my husband and figure out like all the fine details sooner rather than later, because I'd hate for the movers to come and then all of a sudden we're left with throwing stuff out on the street or like giving it away or something, because that would just be terrible. And then what else? Our cars, my precious Toyota RAV4. I don't know why I say that. That's my sister's car. Toyota 4Runner. So when my husband found out that I was pregnant, he decided we needed to upgrade to a family car and have something a little bit more reliable. And I was none too happy to give up my Prius, because I owned my Prius outright and it was paid off, and I loved my Prius, and he didn't. So we traded in the Prius and we got the Toyota 4Runner, and unfortunately our cars are not able to go with us to Japan. So Charles's Mustang is paid off, so we're going to store that. We're going to sell my cars so that we can afford to buy cars in Japan that are, so we have to buy cars in Japan, and military won't ship our cars, and it's understandable. In Japan, their roads are much more narrow, and they also drive on the opposite side of the road, so everything's reversed. It's very European over there. And there's just so much to do, and in about 5 months' time, we are going to be leaving, and everything, like, I am under so much stress just living here in Iowa without my husband, and during this whole COVID bullshit. That's gonna be my one swear word in this whole video. This whole COVID bullshit nonsense. It's definitely taken a toll on me. Mentally, physically, emotionally. Being a single parent, raising your son is definitely a life changer and eye opener, and I wish more parents that are forced to be put through that have a clear understanding of what it is like to go through it. I don't wish this on anybody. I don't really have childcare set up. I rely solely on my family to help me out. And that was the whole reason of coming back to Iowa. I could have stayed wherever I wanted to. I could have stayed in Georgia while Charles was overseas, but I would have no support there. Excuse me. So I just decided to move back home. And then it also gave Charles' families and my family time to spend with my son while he's younger, because once again, we're going to be over there for 3 years, so by the time we get back, he's going to be 5 or 6. And I really wanted them to enjoy him while he's younger, and that's another reason, like, when we got married, my husband told me that he is required to do a 1-year unaccompanied tour, and he'd rather get that done sooner or later. I let him know, well, I want to have a child before I turn 30. So with that put into perspective, he knew where he was going prior to us getting married and me moving out to San Diego. He knew he was going to be stationed in Georgia. So we weren't dead set on having a child as soon as we got married. If you guys know the backstory, you'll know why. But once we got to Georgia, I think we were there for 8 months, maybe 6 months before we decided that we were going to try and start a family, I should say. So when I got to San Diego, immediately I got on birth control. And then when we got to Georgia, I want to say it was October. I do have a couple of videos up explaining getting off Nexplanon. And yeah, 3 months later, in 2019, I was pregnant, and then my son was born in November of 2019. And then that's when the whole pandemic happened. And having a baby during the pandemic, or I should say an infant during the pandemic, is not... It really just sucked. It really did. I love my son to death, but living on a military base during the pandemic was not what I thought it would be. And then everything else is just, it really has been taking a toll on me the last 3 years. But anyway, so here in Iowa, prior to moving to Iowa, my husband and I were kind of discussing on, like, I shouldn't say that, let's back up a little bit. So when he found out that I was pregnant, he decided he was going to do his 1-year tour as soon as we're done with Georgia. So that's what happened. He went on his 1-year unaccompanied tour, where he has to do an overseas tour by himself. No family is required. It's in his contract with the Navy. And then, so he did that. And then as soon as he gets back, we're going to be trying for baby number 2. But we do actually need to speak about in more details if that's really what we want to do, is having a baby in Japan, because that's ultimately where the baby would be born. And like all the stipulations of what it means, like we really do need to sit down. I've heard a couple of stories about if you are high risk pregnancy, you get sent over to the Naval Hospital in Hawaii to deal with that type of stuff because of like just high risk pregnancy. And when I was pregnant with my son, I was considered high risk because I had gestational diabetes. And then if you guys, I don't even know if I do have any videos. Let me just check real fast. If I have any videos on explaining our whole household situation there while I was pregnant. Oh, I'm not even on the right channel. Switch channel. Yeah, so I do have a video about moving out and basically what happened in the last few weeks of my pregnancy. We were forced to move out of our house that we were renting, and during all that stress and trauma, I ended up going into early labor at 37 weeks and having my son 3 weeks early. And so literally, like, we moved all our stuff off the truck, and within 8 hours my waters broke and I ended up having my son 3 weeks early, almost 4 weeks early. You know, like, the human body does wonders, but when you put yourself under stress while carrying a baby, that can induce labor, and that's ultimately what happened. And then, like, all the complications of, like, delivering early and whatnot goes with that. So my pregnancy was far from relaxing. Well, I don't think any pregnancy is, but mine was definitely not your typical pregnancy. And then literally that same month, COVID and then you've got all this hype and hysteria about it. And believe me, I was in there that first few months before quarantine happened in March of 2020. Like, all the hype and hysteria. If y'all wondering what my views are now, it's scientifically proven that COVID does not exist. It's just a very high strain of the flu. It's been proven by doctors, and those doctors have been trying to spread the word, and the media is silencing them. And that's all I will really have to say about that. And fuck Joe Biden. Yep, I have to say that. And then, anyway, so we are moving sometime in late July, sometime in early August. I'm not 100% sure. There's just so much that has to go on. I'm looking forward to it, and that's kind of just where we're at right now. Just kind of doing paperwork, going through our stuff, seeing what we're taking, and I'm starting super early this time and not waiting until the last second, because I think it's a lot less stressful if you do it in 1 month, because there's just so much going on in 1 month. Excuse me. For instance, when we moved from Georgia to Iowa, my husband was gone for a month of training in Virginia, and the entire household pack up and everything was left on my shoulders, and that was hell. That was hell. And we had people flying in to help me move to Iowa. So I had my sister riding with me, and Cameron was riding with my husband in his Mustang, and then my dad in his truck. And literally the day before we left, my husband was just so overwhelmed with everything, because he got back after everything had been put on the truck. He was only back for 1 day before we got on the road. Well, he forgot that his household goods were being picked up separate from mine, because obviously they're going to Greece, I'm going to Iowa. And so people showed up, and he was like, oh my gosh. And it kind of threw off our trip, because stuff that I had set aside for him to take with him to Greece, we actually ended up using in the apartment, because we had nothing in there. That whole move was a mess. I could go on a whole rant about that move, but that was just a nightmare move. And then, yeah, so he completely forgot that his household goods were being picked up separate, and it was just chaotic. Everything was chaotic. But I'm going to go ahead and end it for there and see if I can get this uploaded. Y'all have a wonderful time, and peace out.